Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people's story. For context, I've always been careful with my money. After years of saving and working 60-hour weeks as a software architect, I finally purchased my dream home last year. It's in an upscale neighborhood with manicured lawns and well-maintained properties. The crown jewel of my new home is the gorgeous in-ground pool in the backyard. It's not massive, but it's beautiful with natural stone surrounds, a small waterfall feature, and color-changing LED lighting for evening swims. I take immense pride in maintaining this pool myself. I spent weeks learning about proper chemical balance, filtration systems, and cleaning techniques. Every weekend morning starts with me testing the water, adjusting chemicals as needed, and skimming any debris. It's become a peaceful ritual that I genuinely enjoy. Our neighborhood has an HOA, which I was initially hesitant about, but the regulations seemed reasonable enough during the buying process. There's a community pool, but it's been a disappointment since day one. It's often overcrowded, poorly maintained, and closed for repairs at least once a month during summer. The chlorine levels are either so high your eyes burn or so low that the water looks murky. Not exactly the relaxing experience most residents hope for. My next-door neighbor, who I'll call Board Lady, has been on the HOA board for 5 years, according to other neighbors. From the moment I moved in, she's made numerous comments about my fancy pool and how some people have all the luck. She's constantly peering over the fence when I'm swimming or doing maintenance, asking intrusive questions about the cost of upkeep or wondering aloud why I need such a big pool for just one person. I've always remained polite but distant, which seemed to irritate her even more. Last month, I had to attend an important 3-day business conference out of state. Before leaving, I installed a new security system with multiple cameras covering the property, including the pool area. The system sends motion alerts to my phone, which I figured would give me peace of mind while away. During my trip, I received several motion alerts, but they were mostly at times when I expected the landscaping service to visit, or at night when it could have been local wildlife triggering the sensors. I didn't think much of it until I returned home. The moment I pulled into my driveway, I knew something was wrong. My side gate was unlocked, which I definitely hadn't left that way. When I walked to the backyard, I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. There were pool toys I didn't own floating in the water. Empty beer bottles, wine coolers, and plastic cups littered the pool deck. Someone had used my grill, leaving it filthy with caked-on food residue. Several of my patio chairs were moved or tipped over, and I later discovered one was broken completely. The pool itself was in terrible condition. The water was cloudy and had a greenish tint, something that happens when the chemical balance is severely disrupted. There were sunscreen oil slicks on the surface, and the skimmer baskets were clogged with debris. Anyone who maintains a pool knows this isn't a simple fix. We're talking about a complete draining and refilling in the worst case, or at minimum several days of intense chemical treatment, continuous filtering, and manual cleaning, plus the cost of all the chemicals and potentially a professional service visit if I couldn't correct it myself. I was livid but also confused. Who would do this? My first thought was teenagers, but how would they know I was away? And the gate has a padlock that was clearly unlocked, not broken. I immediately checked my security footage. What I saw made my blood boil. There was Board Lady using a key to unlock my gate. I still have no idea how she got a copy. And leading about 15 people into my backyard. The timestamp showed this happened the very day after I left. The audio was crystal clear as she announced to everyone, "It's completely fine. They're away on business and won't mind us using the pool. Why should such a nice pool sit empty when the community pool is closed for repairs again? Besides, we're neighbors." The footage showed adults and children alike making themselves completely at home in my backyard. They used my outdoor furniture, my pool equipment, my grill, and even my outdoor refrigerator where I keep drinks. But what really crossed the line was when I saw several people going into my house through the back door. I hadn't even checked inside yet. A quick inspection revealed they had used my bathrooms, leaving wet towels on the floor and makeup stains on hand towels. Someone had gone through my refrigerator and pantry, helping themselves to food and drinks. Most disturbingly, I found evidence that someone had been in my bedroom. Dresser drawers were slightly open, and items on my bathroom counter had been moved. I later discovered that some of my toiletries had been used, including an expensive face cream that was now nearly empty. The security footage showed this wasn't a one-time thing. Board Lady and various groups returned 3 more times during my absence, with the largest gathering being what appeared to be a full-on pool party with about 20 people on the second day. After taking photos of all the damage and downloading the security footage, I decided to confront Board Lady directly. I knocked on her door the evening I returned, doing my best to remain calm and composed. When she answered, I explained that I was aware she had entered my property without permission while I was away. Her reaction was not what I expected. Rather than apologizing or appearing embarrassed, she seemed annoyed that I was bringing it up. "Oh, please," she said with an eye roll. "It's not like you were using it. The community pool was closed again and people needed somewhere to cool off during the heat wave. I pointed out that entering my property without permission is trespassing and that they had damaged my pool and other belongings. She had the audacity to respond, "Well, actually, the HOA bylaws state that all amenities should benefit the community during times of need." When I asked to see this supposed bylaw, she waved her hand dismissively. "You should be thankful we maintained your yard while you were gone. We did you a favor, really." They had done no such thing, of course. If anything, they had damaged my carefully maintained landscaping with all the foot traffic. The conversation ended with her threatening that I could face HOA fines for being unneighborly, and suggesting that perhaps the board should review whether my pool equipment was properly approved. It was clear she was trying to intimidate me into dropping the issue. Sure enough, the next morning I received a notice of an HOA violation in my mailbox, citing unauthorized pool equipment visible from the street and improper storage of maintenance items. The items in question were my pool net and brush, which I had left leaning against the shed after my hasty inspection the previous day. Over the next couple of days, I noticed neighbors giving me strange looks or avoiding eye contact. I later learned that Board Lady had been telling people I had offered my pool for community use while I was away, but was now going back on my word and causing problems. At this point, I knew I needed to take serious action. This wasn't just about trespassing anymore. It was about property damage, potential liability issues, and someone actively trying to manipulate the community against me. First, I consulted with a lawyer who specializes in property law and HOA disputes. She reviewed my evidence and confirmed that not only had Board Lady committed criminal trespass, but the unauthorized entry into my home could potentially constitute burglary. The fact that items were used and consumed could be considered theft, even if nothing valuable was taken. Most concerning to my lawyer was the liability issue. If someone had been injured on my property, particularly in the pool, I could have been held responsible despite not giving permission for them to be there. Next, I filed a police report. I was careful to stick to the facts, providing copies of the security footage and photographs of the damage. The officer who took my report was visibly shocked at the brazenness of the trespass and the damage done. He informed me that while they would investigate, it would be my decision whether to press charges once they completed their report. The timing worked out perfectly because the monthly HOA meeting was scheduled for the following evening. I prepared thoroughly, creating USB drives with copies of the security footage for each board member, along with a detailed document outlining the timeline of events and an itemized list of damages. The meeting began with the usual agenda items, but when it came time for resident concerns, I raised my hand. The HOA president recognized me, and I calmly explained that I needed to address an urgent matter involving property damage and trespassing. As I distributed the USB drives to each board member and began explaining what had happened, Board Lady's face went from smug to panicked in seconds. She attempted to interrupt me several times, but the president asked her to let me finish. I methodically outlined the events, showing several short clips from the security footage on my laptop for everyone present to see. The room grew increasingly uncomfortable as the evidence mounted. When I played the clip of Board Lady explicitly telling people it was okay to use my pool without permission, several board members visibly cringed. Then I delivered the facts that I knew would get the board's attention. 3 of the trespassers were minors consuming alcohol on my property, I explained. As I'm sure you're all aware, this creates a serious liability issue, not just for me as the property owner, but potentially for the HOA itself, since a board member facilitated this illegal activity. I then presented my itemized list of damages. The cost to restore the pool to its proper condition, including chemical treatments, professional cleaning, and my own time, came to nearly $900. The broken outdoor furniture needed replacement at a cost of $350. Professional cleaning for the interior of my home, replacing used or damaged personal items and changing the locks added another $500. In total, the damages exceeded $1,750. Rather than immediately threatening litigation, I offered what I considered a reasonable settlement option. The HOA could cover the damages related to the pool restoration and outdoor furniture, while Board Lady would be responsible for the costs related to the home invasion and lock replacement. I would not pursue criminal charges if this settlement was accepted, and Board Lady agreed to issue a written apology that could be distributed to clear my name with the neighbors she had misled. The reaction from the other board members was swift. They called an immediate executive session, asking everyone except board members to step outside. 20 minutes later, we were invited back in. The president announced that the board had voted to remove Board Lady from her position, effective immediately due to abuse of power and actions that put the HOA at legal risk. The board agreed to pay for all damages to avoid potential legal action. Board Lady was instructed to issue the written apology I had requested, and the board would send out a community-wide notice clarifying that at no time had I offered my pool for public use. What surprised me most was when another board member, who lived across the street from me, approached me privately after the meeting. She apologized profusely and admitted that the board had received other complaints about Board Lady's behavior in the past, but had never had such clear evidence of misconduct. She explained that Board Lady had been using her position to intimidate residents and play favorites for years, waiving violations for friends while strictly enforcing rules against those she disliked. The aftermath was surprisingly positive. Board Lady paid her share of the damages, though her apology letter was clearly written through gritted teeth. The police concluded their investigation and gave me the option to press charges, but I declined since the settlement had been reached. I did, however, keep the case number and report on file just in case of future issues. Within 2 months, Board Lady put her house on the market. According to neighbors, she couldn't handle the embarrassment of facing people who had seen the evidence of her actions. Before she moved, I caught her giving me death glares whenever our paths crossed, but she never approached or spoke to me again. The HOA implemented new policies about board member conduct and conflicts of interest. More surprisingly, they actually improved the community pool, hiring a new maintenance company and establishing better oversight of the facility. As for me, I upgraded my security system even further and changed all the locks. When summer rolled around again, I hosted a proper pool party for neighbors I had become friendly with. It was interesting to hear their stories about Board Lady's previous reign of terror, and several people thanked me for standing up to her when no one else had been able to produce enough evidence of her misconduct. Looking back, I'm proud that I handled the situation firmly but fairly. I could have gone scorched earth with litigation and criminal charges, but choosing a reasonable path to resolution while still holding the responsible parties accountable worked out better for everyone. The neighborhood is more pleasant now. The HOA actually functions as it should, and I can enjoy my pool in peace, knowing that no one will be letting themselves in when I'm away. Sometimes standing up for yourself calmly and with overwhelming evidence is the best form of revenge. The next one is a pro-revenge story. Quite long. Many of you saw this on Petty Revenge, but I guess the mods thought it was too serious, so here it is again. Sorry about the repost. Let's go back a few years. I was a combat engineer platoon sergeant. We had recently gotten a new company commander who thought his crap didn't stink. My first interaction with him was when I got back from running a M240B range, where I was told he wanted to speak to all leadership immediately in the conference room. Well, it took 3 HRs for him to arrive, and despite one SG calling many times, he insisted we stay. The entire meeting was him bragging about himself and saying that he was trying to get the company slotted for a deployment to the Middle East, as well as how excited he was to go. I spoke up and basically said he's a dumbass, but with more words, which ended the meeting, which got me a stern talking to and thinly veiled threats. This captain had been in for 15 years and never once been deployed. That takes effort and a lot of figurative dick-sucking. He only wanted to go now because he was up for major. It turned out Brigade had a mission and asked for volunteers. Captain Dipcrap volunteered me to go, despite knowing I had gotten married a week earlier. I made it very clear I did not want to go to the higher-ups. I was told it was between myself and the captain. Well, a month out, my sister-in-law committed suicide immediately after she miscarried at 33 weeks. Found them both in the basement of their house. Well, Captain Dipcrap didn't care, no leave, and I was still to leave about a week after the funeral. Duck him, I walked in to talk to the command sergeant major and was immediately dropped from the deployment. But the captain was so far up the battalion commander's ass that nothing happened to him. After about 8 months later, Captain Dipcrap got his wish. Headquarters platoon and one other was slotted to deploy. Of course, because I had the most combat experience and most deployments in the platoon, he naturally decided that's why my platoon should go. Now, in order to deploy, you first have to go to a month-long field exercise where you are graded on performance. This generally applies to the higher levels of leadership. By this time, I was just pissed. So I got my squad leaders together and improvised a few missions. First, everyone was to follow the CPT's instructions as literally as possible, no matter how dumb, and not to give any advice. This led us to getting absolutely destroyed in training, which was glorious. Secondly, and most importantly, was the psychological aspect. So, this dipcrap commander would go to bed nightly at 2100, no matter what. In the deserts of California, you can find all sorts of creepy crawlies to slip in a sleeping bag while sprinkling juice on his uniform. They'd also periodically hide some of his gear or render his rifle inoperable. So for days this went on. Poor guy slept very little because I ensured his tent was set over top of a beehive. These bees hated any vibration and loved juice. The dumbass never realized why he was constantly getting stung. As we were to be falling under a new brigade, I had to go meet the higher-ups, and wouldn't you know it, the call we were set to fall under turned out had been my first company commander who I got along great with. I pulled him aside and called up my squad leaders, where we basically told him Captain Dipcrap was going to get someone killed, pointed out his erratic behavior and the overall poor performance. Needless to say, he was quickly relieved of command, career killer, and sent back to work in an office where he belonged. As for myself and my platoon, I still didn't want to go, but the new company commander was my old platoon leader from my second deployment, plus I couldn't let my guys go without me. Turned out it would be my last deployment as some injuries force you out of the military, but everyone came back alive. The next one is a malicious compliances story. Hey y'all, it's your friendly neighborhood meat counter guy. I had an order waiting for a customer who we'll call John. He ordered a whole ham. It was waiting all by its lonesome in our meat back room, untagged for some reason. I get it for him and weigh it out, and the price comes to $46.31. He begins to take the ham and then asks me to cut it in half. I said, well, okay, sure, but the second I agree to this, he says, oh, could you trim it off the bone? This carving is not only something I can't do, but it's a different price. I end up throwing out the original ticket instead of tagging it, mainly because I forgot. He took the ham from me and said, well, I'm sorry you're such a funking idiot and can't figure out how to cut a ham. When does the butcher come back? I told him that he comes in at 7 a.m. He leaves without additional incident, and I eventually get a call from the cashier who asks my dyslexic ass for the price. I said 31.46. Then he said, really? Which should have been N indicator. I suddenly hear the customer in the background grumbling his Dennis the Menace Mr. Wilson grumble as the cashier tells me that the customer doesn't think that's the right price and I better change the price. Enter MC, I thought as this was going on that the cashier questioning the price was more like an, oh wow, that's cheap. And I realized the price I said was way too cheap. I told him, hey, tell the customer I'll happily change the price for him, and he can even come with to see the price change. Old Man River, John, Mr. Wilson, what have you, saunters back to the meat department along with his ham in a handbasket, looking like Little Red Riding Hood with equally naive expectations of the next few moments of his life. In comes the big bad wolf to weigh the ham. I even say what I'm ringing up as I look up the code. So whole ham, farmers, not spiral sliced, 2.49 a pound, here you go. Tag is for $46.31, which is visible to his side as well as mine. Oh, I see what happened. My bad, sir. My dyslexia kicked in over the phone. It was 46.31, comma, not 31.46. Here you go. The audible exhale of breath was enough to energize me for the rest of the shift, just like Scream Juice or whatever it is fueled Monster Inc. The next one is an entitled people story. Sometimes I really hate the people of the state I'm born and raised in. I've got a truck, so I've been asked more than a few times since buying it to help friends and family move things. There's also a whole story involved in my buying the truck about the previous owner's ex-wife, but I'm not going to go into detail about it here. Anyway, last week the cousin of a friend, someone I'd only been acquainted with twice, suddenly asked for me for help moving stuff out of his old apartment and into his new apartment. He was physically disabled and needed a cane to walk. The friend of a friend told me his cousin was disabled from a bad spine injury around a decade prior and had finally gotten a Section 8 apartment. They kind of played up the fact that he was disabled to get my help, so I reluctantly agreed. But then they guy was actually offended when I said I'd only help if he paid me for my time and gas. I think he thought he could get my help free. But this was a guy that was a cousin to someone I'm not even close to, that was friends with someone I'm barely close to. Some of my other friends called this guy a total Gary. Not sure if that's some new meme or an inside joke, don't really care either. But I'll use the name Gary just to make things easier, so I helped Gary to move after he agreed to pay me, but he acted completely butthurt when I refused to help unless he paid me in advance. I'm not dumb. I could tell this guy would have tried to weasel out of paying me if I asked for the money after. so he begrudgingly gave me $100 cash for 2 trips of getting his stuff out of storage and to his new apartment. But he totally lied about the distance we'd be driving. He said 20 miles, but when I put the address into the GPS, it was 35. I used most of what he paid me just to put gas in my truck, because I made multiple trips of driving this guy's stuff 35 miles each way. That was 140 miles total, and I was doing most of the heavy lifting because Gary couldn't do any heavy lifting because of his bad back. The apartment I was helping get the stuff to was also on a 3rd floor, and only accessible by stairs. So that was a lot of painful lifting. Once all the stuff was finally unloaded, Gary wanted me and the friend of a friend who introduced me to him to stick around and help him unpack and arrange everything. I tried to be nice about it, but he kept insisting and told me I have to help more since I gouged him for cash. I got mad and pointed out I helped him for several hours and I barely know him. If anything, I undercharged him, especially since he lied about how far we were going. Plus, he clearly didn't even want to pay me to begin with. He'd have had to pay several times more if he hired professional movers. Plus, he was constantly rude to me the entire time, and I heard him call me a redneck garbage collector when he thought I wasn't listening. Then I told him what my actual job and salary is, and that I'm never going to help him with anything ever again. Gary got really red in the face, and I walked out while he called me names and said he never wanted to see me again. I said back the feeling was pretty mutual. And now that he's so far away, I'm probably not going to be seeing him again anytime soon, which I'm thankful for. I've also told my other friends about this, and they all agree Gary was out of line, and the friend of a friend who put me up to all that hasn't even messaged me to apologize. I was incredibly mad after leaving, and decided I was going to get some beer and just go home and get drunk. I stopped at a gas station, got the beer, and then noticed a taco truck down the street. So I parked at the taco truck, ordered the biggest overpriced burrito they had, and then sat in their waiting area. As I was sitting there, I noticed some random guy in a plaid shirt just casually stroll up to my truck and reach in through the window. He snagged my 6-pack of beer and started to just walk away casually with it, but I yelled at him to put the beer back. He stopped and looked at me like a deer in headlights, then tried to act innocent and claim he was just walking home with his beer. I remarked, "I'm the owner of the truck he just stole that beer out of," and I just watched him do it. Then I said to put the beer back before started calling the police. He actually complained that it was just a 6-pack of beer and I could easily go buy another one. I told him it didn't matter what it was. He was a thief, and an entitled one at that, and to put the damn beer back before I got mad. He dropped the beer back on my seat from the window, then gave me the finger before leaving. Someone nearby remarked the thief was a local homeless drug addict who acts like that to everyone, and he'd gotten his ass kicked a few times in similar incidents. I immediately closed the windows and locked the doors on my truck, and then got my burrito and scarfed it down. I should have been surprised to deal with 2 really entitled people in one day, but frankly, I'm just not anymore. Also, I'll never be getting food from that place again because that burrito somehow wrecked my insides, and normally I can handle eating whatever. But I was in and out of the bathroom all night. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.